right, guys. So sometimes Desmos can be very helpful when it comes to graphing a given inequality. But what happens when they give you the graph and you need to write the inequality? Well, to do this, Desmos can still help you a little bit, but first you got to do some work yourself. And I like to use what I call Mr. Mo's steps for success. And I call it steps for success because there's actually four steps you need to follow. Step number 1, determine whether it's a solid or a dashed line. What do I mean by solid or a dashed line? Let's do a quick review. When you have a solid line, that tells me that my inequality has to have either the less than or equal symbol or the greater than or equal symbol. And when you have a dashed line instead, my symbols are less than or greater than. That's it. So this inequality, this graph actually has a solid line. So my two possible inequalities has to have a less than or equal or greater than or equal. Those are my two possible choices right now. All right. What else can I do? Well, one thing before moving on to step number 2 is you need to realize that, a good old equation y equals mx plus b. This equation can still help us because even though it's not an equation, it's a straight linear inequality. So we're going to use the same formula except for the equations. So we have y is less than or equal mx plus b, or y is greater than or equal mx plus b. One of these is the right inequality. We just got to know which one. All right. Well, let's move on to step number 2. Let's find the y-intercept. And what's the y-intercept, guys? In our equation, y equals mx plus b, the y-intercept is letter b. And y-intercept is basically when it crosses the y line right there. You call it a point 0 y. You see? Oh, that looks like a 6. 0 y. But look at this graph. This is the x, this is the y. Where am I crossing the y line? Right here. So what would you call that point? I would call that point 0, -2. So guys, we found our y-intercept. How about we replace both b's by a -2, which I could take out the plus and just call it mx minus 2. mx minus 2. Okay? That was step number 2. Step number 3, let's find the slope. All right, guys, so the slope. If you don't remember what is slope is actually the letter m. And slope could be found by looking at the rise over the run. How high, how low you went, and how left, how right you moved. Well, let's start at -2, guys. I want to get to -4. How many do I need to go up to reach -4? Well, I go 2 up. I went 2 up. And then I went how many to the left? I went 4 to the left. So, guys, when I went 2 up, isn't that a +2? And when I went 4 left, isn't that a -4? So we have a negative fraction, but if we were to reduce that, 2 over 4, isn't that -1/2? And we got ourselves the slope, the m. So once again, let's erase the letter m. Let's erase the letter m. Let's just put a -1/2 on both. Okay, guys, we are done with step number 3. Step number 4, we're going to go with our good old friend, Mr. Desmos himself. Well, Desmos can actually help us which inequality is correct. Because look, isn't this inequality shading in a certain area of the graph? Well, we're going to go to Desmos, and we're going to see which one of these is doing the same. So let's graph the first one, guys. Y is less than or equal -1 divided by 2 x minus 2. All right, guys, look at this graph. Let's put this away. Notice that it's almost the same graph, but what am I coloring? I'm coloring the bottom side. This graph on my left side is actually coloring the positive or the top right-hand side. So guess what, guys? If I were to change that symbol to the other one we're looking for, look at that. We actually have the correct side. So which one is the correct inequality? Is actually the one that has the greater than or equal to. And that's how you can check which one is the right one.